Max Carson, better known as Mr. Girl, is a fairly notorious figure in the online sphere. Max's contrarian nature has gotten him to a lot of hot water over the years, with the most infamous example being his review of the movie Cuties, but more on that later. The story of Mr. Girl is as convoluted as it is degenerate, with twists and turns at every corner, creating a hedge maze, each leaf more deviant than the last. If the Cuties drama was all you knew about Max, I won't blame you. However, as you'll soon come to find, Max has an extensive history, on the platform and off.
Sure.
This video was originally an almost light-hearted attempt to share on some of Max's creepy takes. However, as I delved deeper into his not-so-hidden history, I realized he's much worse than I and I think many other people originally thought. So feel free to join me as we fall down the rabbit hole of YouTube's most depraved creator, and maybe we'll be able to piece together the fractured morality of Mr. Girl.
Hi cuties. Guess what I just watched?
I don't have sex with enthusiastic people.
I like masturbating in front of women.
Was it rape? Yes, I guess.
Mr. Girl is a provocateur. He seems to feed off of attention, and the simplest way to satisfy that craving is making the most brain-dead take imaginable and publishing it to the internet. As you'll soon find out, he says some absolutely vile stuff, with the line between satire and reality being blurred. There are points where you think he might be trolling, and there are points where you really hope he's trolling. There have been many attempts from Mr. Girl to cause controversy, but none have been as fruitful as his review of the movie Cuties. Cuties is a French film which sparked outrage after being acquired by Netflix. People were disgusted by just the poster, and justifiably so. This outrage was only increased after the film was released, with people labeling it as softcore. The movie is about a group of 11-year-old dancers, played by actors around that age. The film spends a lot of time showing these girls acting extremely sexually and dancing extremely sexually. Of course, the intent wasn't to film softcore. Instead, I guess, showing that little girls dancing sexually is bad. I mean, yeah, good cause, but you can say murder is bad without going up to someone and choking them to death. A film that caused seemingly global moral outrage. A film which would prove to be Max Carson's golden goose. On the 10th of September 2020, Max released an uncomfortably honest review of Cuties. Within 2 days, the video had racked up nearly 20k views, and for the first time, Mr. Girl as we know him was put on the radar.
Well, I've done it. I found a review on YouTube of someone not only defending the movie Cuties, but also explaining why it gives them a boner.
I actually cannot tell if this person is joking, if this entire channel is just one whole elaborate irony stunt.
That the film is kind of roping you into the discussion of the sexualization of children. Bisexual.
Oh, I'm sure you shot plenty of ropes over the...
No. In reality, this movie review should straight up just be called, I'm not a pedo, but...
But today I present to you guys the scum of the earth, the worst that man has to offer, the type of man that causes society to collapse on itself and no longer exist.
At the time, there must have been thousands of people talking about it, and how weird and gross it is. I mean, they weren't wrong. The video didn't do much to increase Mr. Girl's fanbase, in fact the opposite. Instead, the hundreds of thousands of views and the hundreds of thousand people talking about the video would give Max something more valuable than subscribers. Infamy. Well, until the video got taken down a month later for breaking down community guidelines. Then put back up, then take it down again, then put back up, then take it down again. I haven't seen Cuties, and I don't plan on doing so, mainly because the reviews I've seen, including Mr. Girl's, have proven that this movie is, in fact, as bad as people say it is, and, you know, I don't particularly want to spend an hour and a half watching little girls dancing sexually. Instead of sitting here dissecting every god-awful take Max has had on the movie, because for one I'll be the millionth person to do so, allow me to begin to introduce you to some of the lesser known stuff Max has said, and yes, it's worse. In 2007, Sung Hoi Cho, a student at Virginia Tech University, carried out a mass shooting, taking unfortunately 32 lives and wounding 17. To this day, it's considered the deadliest school shooting in US history. This is, of course, tragic, but why is it relevant to Mr. Girl? Well, before he was Mr. Girl, Max Carson was Mr. Yeti, or at least that was the pseudonym he used in order to write for his school's newsletter, the Yeti. This instance specifically is where his contrarian nature was seemingly at its worst. Instead of paying respect to the victims and their families, he used his position as editor for the Yeti in order to make comments about understanding how someone could kill 32 people.
Anybody who says they've never thought about killing 32 people is A, lying to themselves, B, trying to stay out of jail, C, a pussy, or D, an overprivileged American who can't empathize with oppressed people who are forced to defend themselves against tyranny in developing countries and in oppressed communities in the US too.
These comments would eventually lead to his arrest, although not before he was able to write and publish a fake suicide note to the newsletter.
If you are reading this, I am dead. At 9:30 this morning, I ingested a slow-acting but fatal mixture of ammonia, rat poison, and peanut butter. You can probably see my awkward and uncoordinated gait. That's the poison destroying my central nervous system. At 2 p.m, when I've finished distributing this newsletter, I will go back to the Norlin Library and crawl to the back of the stacks. There, I will fall on my face beneath the Black History section, convulse, and die. This isn't one of those 11-year-old girl suicide attempts where I secretly hope to wake up in a hospital bed with a tummy ache and a weeping, repenting mother at my side. I know that no one will miss me.
Spoiler alert, he's still very much alive. However, this article was a while into the Yeti, and I mean, the backlog is, I guess, a bit better. I mean, not like there's much competition, with Mr. Yeti claiming, among other things, that he is afraid of black people, he thinks women are pussies, and along the same lines, he thinks that girls won't shag him because he's interesting and unique. Incel rage aside, this newsletter was insane, and goes to show how little Max has changed in the past 15 years. I mean, I don't know, I guess he's got a noble reason.
Let's just get down to what are your motives for writing this newsletter?
To make the world a better place. I think there's a lot of social issues out there, important things that people aren't talking about, like racism and sexism and homophobia and things like that, that I feel like would be better addressed in a humorous manner than by preachy, finger shakers.
The issue is, in a similar vein to Max's future career, he goes about this in the worst way possible and managed to intersperse his god-awful takes almost under the front of satire or even trolling. A tactic Amos Yee would shamelessly steal 8 years later.
I don't know. I don't think that reading my newsletter is going to convert someone who wasn't a rapist to being a rapist, or is going to make someone who has no prejudice whatsoever to suddenly being like, wow, I do hate women. I think that sort of bigotry is ingrained in early childhood. I don't think people just pick that up from reading some newsletter.
In the following years, Max would start making videos online. His first available video was posted in 2017, and it's about Mortal Kombat. However, Max would soon change to making more politically provoked and thought-provoking videos such as I'm an SJW for straight white men, why Trump supporters don't like you, and why Fortnite is so addictive. Oh, that one seems out of place. These videos would serve as deconstructions of these ideas by Max, a quote born and bred liberal, and would make up the majority of his content going forward. Of course, none of these videos would do amazingly, but even today he sticks with a form of them, and his political content seems to be his most popular, allowing him to actually grow an audience, likely helped by his debates with figures like Destiny. After all, political videos are often the most controversial, perfect for Max. All of this brings us to some of Mr. Girl's worst moments. If you thought the cutie review was as bad as it gets, you have no clue what you're in for. Max is very open sexually, and he's made some very strange videos in that regard. The best example, I think, is the video Mr. Girl's Day Off, a masturbation documentary. Mr. Girl uploaded the video to Pornhub, wherein, he just fills his day, and then he starts jacking off. There are 3 main reasons I thought I'd give this one a miss. 1, I can't show like any of it. 2, I'm sure there isn't all too much substance and I don't really want to waste half an hour. 3, watching a man in his mid-30s jack off, because above all else, it's a bit pathetic, and if your morbid curiosity is starting to get the best of you, I'll give you one warning. I scrubbed through the video and, gonna be honest, you probably also want to give it a miss. Also, feel free to give MrGirl's slow motion ejaculation a miss and all. Although, even skipping the videos, you can learn a lot about Max. His videos, for example, are video games and masturbating in front of people. Shockingly, while this video didn't do too much for his YouTube channel, he managed to go to 30k views on Pornhub, so good on him, I guess. However, in all seriousness, as disturbing as his documentary is, it doesn't hold a candle to some of his takes. Take this video for example. One of Max's biggest ideals is that having bad thoughts don't make you a bad person. You know, I can agree to an extent. If you have an intrusive thought, I don't think that should necessarily make you a bad person, but if you actively think about that bad thought to the point where you constantly normalize and fantasize about it, that's where, in my opinion, we have a problem. If you want to rape a child but don't actually go through with it, to MrGirl, you are completely fine. I would disagree. In this video, Max claims a multitude of very disgusting things.
Kids will test your sexual boundaries, and you have to be able to hold them.
I mean, realistically, how often does that just accidentally happen? Like, you slip and fall into a fucking child, right? If you're in a situation where a child is testing your sexuality, that is a position you have to put yourself in. And to be honest, I think Max is vastly overestimating how many normal people could be aroused by a minor under particular circumstances. How about a slightly different concerning take?
When I have kids of my own, and I'm absolutely going to, and I pick a babysitter, I'm going to prefer someone who has explored that pedophile part of their sexuality.
I wouldn't. I don't think you should either. These are the takes that seem to skirt the line of satire. Surely he's just saying these things for attention, right? And to be honest, that's what I thought at first. I mean, that's what I hoped. But as I continue to research, as I continue to fall down the rabbit hole, I began to realize he, at least in some sense, believes everything he's saying. Is Max a pedophile? Maybe. Who am I to say? However, the next video I'm going to discuss was the final nail in the coffin. A video concerning Max Carson's definitely different takes on rape.
Am I saying that rape victims want it on some level? Unfortunately, yes. And that's probably the reason rape is so psychologically destructive to people, because some part of you does want it.
However, believe it or not, that statement isn't even the worst to come out of this video.
Finally, I get her on top of me. I put my dick in place, like right at her vagina, and I'm like, all right, let's do this. She holds perfectly still and says, "I'm not ready." Clear as day, no mistaking her meaning. She doesn't consent. But she has this look in her eye, like she's daring me to just push it in. Like I'm some kind of pussy if I don't. I could have been imagining that, but I grabbed her shoulders and pushed her down onto my dick.
I fucked her! Oh god, oh god.
What makes this fucking horrifying anecdote worse is the clip at the end. After showing this to a morbidly curious friend, I was informed that this clip is from the film Seven. This character breaks down and admits to raping a woman, but the only reason he did it was because he was under the threat of being murdered, and he is devastated by that. Max uses this clip as a punchline, the setup being he's admitting to having raped a woman. It's insane to me that a fictional character is feeling more remorse. His weird takes on rape managed to even transcend this video. Somewhat recently, the small commentator Pieman outed themselves as being friends with a pedophile and potential rapist, jerking off to nudes of their underage friends provided to Pieman by their friend. People took issue with this. I should just mention the nudes were of teenagers, but Pieman is also a teenager around the same age. Despite that, it's still fucking strange. The worst part, in my opinion, however, is that Pieman was receiving these nudes from a third party. These people were Pieman's friends, and when they found out, I'm sure you can imagine just how violated they felt. But Max couldn't. I won't go in depth here because, I mean, I already have a video not only dissecting the interview, but going in depth into Pieman's fairly degenerate history. However, I feel like it's important to note two things. Firstly, Max doesn't consider statutory rape to be real rape.
Yeah, so statutory just means that the age difference or power differential makes it rape,
it's
but
like
it's
forcibly rape.
You're like real rape, okay.
Secondly, similarly to the Virginia Tech shooter, Max seems to see Pieman as the real victim and the people shitting on them are the true villains of the story.
And you think my view that you're holding yourself to a kind of inhuman standard is wrong?
I definitely disagree with your stance.
I shouldn't have to tell you, the teenagers who had their nudes shared around without their knowledge, let alone their permission, are the real victims, not Pieman. Max would go on to have a pseudo-debate with Aiden Projects, a YouTuber who had been following the Pieman situation and disagreed with Max's takeaway. In order to prove his point, Max would say some pretty disgusting stuff, which would show how warped his sense of the world is.
You can't trust passed out people around 16-year-olds. Way less than you can trust them around 26-year-olds. You can't even trust them at college.
I mean, Max is greatly underestimating how many people would be willing to grope a 16-year-old. Of course, it does happen, I'm not saying it doesn't, but Max seems to be trying to imply anyone given the chance will grope someone, and I'm sorry, but it's just not true. Anyway, more in line with Pieman specifically, Max admits to something incredibly creepy.
One of us, unbeknownst to the rest of us, went in her room while she... Wait. Maybe we did now. I don't remember this part. But one of us went into her room and went through her stuff and found pictures of her naked and stole them and brought them back to his house.
This puts into perspective why he's dying on the Pieman Hill, I guess. He goes on to say the girl wasn't bothered, but that doesn't excuse Max having no issue with a friend literally stealing nudes. I was in genuine shock when I first heard this. Finally, Max went and did a porn debate, debating whether or not porn is bad, and I'm sure I don't have to tell you his position, I'm sure you can infer that one. During this debate, the topic of flamenco was brought up. A little while before this, a YouTuber called Flamenco was outed for jerking off to a hentai manga wherein the main character is a 15-year-old. Pretty weird and creepy, and Flamenco even agrees. However, similarly to Pieman, Max thinks Flamenco is being too hard on himself and opted to defend him.
Well, no.
I'm fucking defending you, bro.
I know.
I'm your lawyer. I'm your lawyer.
God. Okay, well, I'll go tie the noose real quick right now.
MrGirl's gonna explain to you why it's good to jerk off to Lolly or something.
Mine and a lot of other people's stance on Lolly is different to Max's. I think masturbating to a drawing designed to look like a child is indicative of someone's true feelings, someone unable to get a hold of actual CP because of the law, so they go and jerk off to a drawing instead. Max thinks there's no moral issue with masturbating to Lolly or any porn depicting a drawn underage character, harkening back to his belief that fantasizing about something illegal and disgusting is completely morally okay. I do not like MrGirl. I think he's incredibly creepy, and if he does in fact believe everything he's saying, which after the hours upon hours I spent researching this video, I have a feeling he does, the fact he still has a platform is baffling. I could very well sit here and list off every disgusting thing Max has said, but I don't really want to make a 10-hour video, to be honest. However, I hope I've managed to show you just how awful Max can be. I mean, the worst part about it is he's entertaining, he's charismatic, he's definitely not the intellectual he thinks he is, but I mean, if you weren't paying attention, it wouldn't be hard to mistake him for someone who at the very least knows what he's on about. This video is like fucking insane to research, and like, I've got to be honest, like some of it was genuinely quite disturbing. So yeah, feel free to subscribe if you like the video, follow me on Twitter. And with all that being said, I've been hahayeah, and I'll see you next time.